Good morning and welcome to another edition of Roadhouse Last Call, the morning show that gives you stuff about the morning, the evening, some weird and sometimes off the hinge commentary from Bender. Bender says really, really wild stuff constantly, so we have to deal with that. Yeah, good morning, everyone.
Yeah, it's me. It's me that says the wild stuff that you have to worry about. That's me.
Have to worry about. Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
I know. It's but we embrace you for who you are, Bender, and you bring
I
more.
appreciate that. How do you do it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have no idea. It's a good question. I'll have to ponder. How's your night?
It was good. It was good.
Well, China had its little GDP thing, and there was contraction there. Everybody knew that it was going to be bad going in, but there was not a shit show associated with it, so that's helpful. News that is not all that friendly, that gets digested, is more beneficial than not to the markets moving higher. So we can take that as a W moving forward. As far as our data, we had retail sales this morning. We had a couple other data points, but they all came in relatively beneficial to the overall net narrative that maybe inflation is cooling out a little bit, maybe, at least under the hood wise. And at the same time that the consumer still has a level of strength and is not being beaten into the ground. At least that's what the data is saying. One of the items that came in as a big jump in surprise was a New York Empire State Manufacturing Index that came in much higher than expected and much higher month over month. So that stuff like that is good and it's helpful. We're not out of the woods yet. We have Bostic and Bullard speaking here in a couple of minutes if they're not already. So those guys are going to be blabbering. Bullard did say that yesterday there was commentary with Bullard as far as not endorsing a full point hike. I think that the fact that they're looking at the overall landscape and wanting to be a little bit measured in their response and not knee-jerk reacting to individual data points, again, is more of a positive element for the market in general. So we'll see. It looks like we're going to get a 75 basis instead of a full point, which I think is going to be well received by the market. We have some more data coming out. Consumer sentiment. Last time we had consumer sentiment come out, it was an absolute shit show after the consumer said that they didn't have good feelings. We get that 30 minutes after market open. So, play your positions accordingly. Going into that print, last time we had it, it was an absolute wreck. Outside of that, I wasn't enthused with any of the headlines as far as actually being noteworthy. There really, in my opinion, isn't anything all that super noteworthy other than managing the data and the narrative surrounding the data, which I think that we covered this morning. Bender, tell us what lines we're going to touch today, seeing that you're so damn good at it.
I mean, I will do my best. I don't know what happens, but I'll tell you what I'm looking at. So we continue to test that longer term trend line and kind of dick around with it, just above, just below, dips below it, get bought. That trend line right now sits around 37.45. We've been talking about that 37.44-ish for a few days. So it's still right there. So far, we've continued to hold that. You've got... So I had to redo my numbers because we just had that, little rip there from 3,800 up 30 points to 3830. So I had to redo my above and below real quick. Below, you have the 5 MA and the 50 MA on the daily squished together around 3817. So on a pullback, let's watch that 3817. And just above and I think this is an important area for today. 3840 has the 10 MA on the daily, and the 200 MA on the 60 minute is at 3837. So that area, 3837 to 3842, 5 points in there. I think that's going to be important to set up, the day. So I have 3840 being, kind of a key level. On a pullback, we want to see 3800 hold. Obviously, you have that 3817 on the way there. But if 3800 gives, then we look at back down at that 3745 trend line.
Okay.
If we keep going up above 3840, we've got previous resistance at 3855, and then again at 3890 and 3920. But I think 3840 is kind of that point where it's like, okay, all right, we're above the 200 on the 60 minute. You're above the 10 MA on the daily. You look for a push through, pull back, and hold as support.
Very nice. Any tickers in particular that you're looking for and looking at?
No, I mean that's Mike's. That's Stonkington's job.
And well, he gone. He's not here, so it was more of a last ditch effort to fill his void.
Well, I can tell you what the charts that I've got up right now. Microsoft. We talked about how they were kind of lagging yesterday. Financials. I'll have up on the screen and just kind of see what they do. What else? XBI, still watching that. And interested to see what BABA does today.
Yeah, I'm interested in that too. And not that I will swing anything more than a couple of minutes at a time, hopefully, when it comes to these Chinese tickers. But yeah. I think that there's going to be some real tell and what the market reaction is over there with those. It's a very, very interesting dynamic. It's like you're just so truly playing hot potato over there with those things. It's crazy. So things that I'm specifically looking at today.
In crypto. Sorry. MSTR and Mara.
Yeah, no, we talked about crypto yesterday. We saw some pretty decent bid-side puts on Mara yesterday. They were closing out of puts on Mara. And Bitcoin has held that 20,000 level pretty well. We mentioned that intraday yesterday, how it was just kind of, it's hanging in there. And we know how if it goes berserk, it likes to go berserk over the weekends for the most part. So let's keep an eye on that flow. If they're coming in and loving on the Mister and some Mara, it's like, hey man, could be a good story and good scene. Specifically, tickers that I'm looking for via flow to come through to kind of tell me a story. I'm looking for activity around SQQQ to see what they're doing with that. I'm looking for the story surrounding airlines at the same time. I would like to see some flow coming into that. Banks, obviously, very important to see. So we had our earnings. We had an understanding for the most part of where they are and where they sit. We're, right around 2-year lows on some of these tickers. What's next? Are we going to penetrate those further to the downside, or do we have some dip buyers that could potentially give us a broad market rally? Flow into financials is going to be very important, as I would say travel, leisure, airlines, that kind of stuff is going to be equally important. Also going to be looking at cat flow and deer flow. Those do a pretty decent job of giving an indication of how the market feels the economy is going to be moving forward. Usually when they're shorting cat and deer, it means that they think they ain't shit happening good. So there's that. Same with MasterCard and Visa. We'll be watching those tickers very, very closely from a flow standpoint. We did have a very large, I don't say very large, we had a sizable bid side put yesterday on MasterCard. And it was probably, at least up into that point yesterday, my favorite line of flow of the day. It was nice to see. because that has a direct relation back to the consumer. So that's going to be on watch for me very, very specifically. So those are the areas that I'm looking at. Specific tickers, obviously, Tesla, we saw some activity, bounce back and forth on those 700s and 680 puts. We also saw some activity into the 720s and 730 calls and for this week and into next week. Tesla reports next week, so there's going to be a fine balance of risk off. And to be honest with you, I've yet to really determine what risk off for Tesla is going into this ER. If that's going to be covering or if that's going to be selling. I cannot tell you gun to head how I feel that what risk off is for Tesla. So we do have earnings kicking off next week. We did take a pretty good whooping stick up until this morning as far as where we're sitting across the board. So that is what my eyes are going to be peeled on. The other thing, we mentioned financials. And I know that this ticker is a name that drives a lot of people bananas, but SoFi has held in extraordinarily well all week long. It has held in. It has done its job of maintaining a level above that 550 when a lot of things got punched in the face. It held its own. And if you're being constructive, take the name off and look at the chart. You can see that there are some pieces to the puzzle there that looks like it is set for a rebound. I'll also say this from a narrative standpoint regarding SoFi in relation to the other banks. These other banks, on their bottom line and their balance sheets, they carry extreme expense, brick and mortar costs that SoFi does not. They're free of that type of activity. So there's some elements that moving forward could make it one of those things that is looked upon as being and we've talked about this, revolutionary to the industry, and gives them the ability to grow without having the weight of legacy brick and mortar institutions. So that's what I'm watching. That's what I'm looking at. I have continued these past 2 days buying more shares and in Tesla and in SoFi. I'm kind of done at this point as far as buying on this dip, and we'll see how everything shakes out. Does anybody in the room have anything that they would like to offer? Any tickers that we should be aware of, things that we should be looking at? We believe that Ben and I covered the nuts and bolts this morning.
I'll let you cover the nuts and the bolts. I'll just talk about charts.
And gaps.
And gaps.
They're filled.
Yep.
Hey, speaking of which, are we making a gap on the chart right now? Are we gapping on SPY? Or we're going to have a gap on the daily?
On SPY, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we closed yesterday 377.91. Right now showing 381.81.
What was yesterday's high? So 379 basically would fill if you, depending on how people gap math, depending on what your choice is. So 379 would be gap fill on this blitz. So, and again, I want to say it again, we have consumer sentiment 30 minutes after open, and we have some earnings next week. So again, when you're picking up options, when you're looking to put on a play, make sure you have understanding when they report and navigate around that. Anything that reports next week from an option standpoint, you're going to have some additional juice sitting on them. Just be aware of all of those things as you're entering to play the game. So, Bender, that's all I got, buddy. We got,
all right.
What is it, 26 minutes?
Yep.
Till game time? All right. Anybody has any questions, comments, anything that they want to post as far as ideas? Let's see. Total is, he's into some DIC and some ASO. We've got some folks watching COP. Starbucks is interesting also. BITO, thank you, Delta. BITO is very, very interesting. That's one of the Bitcoin things. So that falls in line. And we did have a dark pool there. So that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. Kind of cool. City is on watch for Aviator 1. Very nice. All right, guys, as always, once we get into the day, please post your setups and ideas and comments as far as us being able to operate as a team. Yesterday, I thought was really amazing, and I know I'm dragging on here, but I apologize for that. Yesterday, I thought was one of the more remarkable days as far as us working as a team together and achieving greatness. More of that, please. More of just y'all just kicking ass. Really appreciate it. Anyways, I only have 25 minutes until game time. See you soon.
Okay, so are you done talking so we don't have to count down every minute?
Yeah, I'm done talking.
I'm just playing.
I'm gonna shut up now.
No. Good information. Thank you, Health. We'll see you in a bit.